Hi, and welcome to the Objective Sound channel. Today I'll be giving a graph analysis of the BGVP DM6, and in doing so I'll also do a semi-review. Okay, so first a recap. So my Objective Sound 3-step guideline for analyzing frequency curves. You can find this in my previous video on how to analyze frequency curves, and it will explain everything to you. So before you analyze any frequency curve, I always say you have to learn the fundamentals behind human hearing, right? You can't skip out on the physics and stuff. Lots of physics, a lot of anatomy, and you can't skip that stuff, otherwise it makes no sense. And in that video I also talk about Harmon curve, which is very important for analyzing frequency curves. Harmon curve, which is the basis for, which is the objective reference for a balanced neutral sound. Right? It's supposed to mimic a flat speaker. Okay, let's go through the 3-step guideline for analyzing frequency curves. Number 1, at what frequency should your amplitude match the Harmon curve with the headphones, earphones curve so that it could best represent the overall sound? So this is done by matching the moving the curve up and down, the whole curve, so that the area above the Harmon curve and the area below are even. So I only focus on areas between 20 Hz and 10 kHz, because anywhere below 20 you can't hear. Right? Don't pretend that you have you're not human, you're some alien or some special person. You can't hear below 20. And above 10, it's pretty much just like a ringing sound. You don't really hear pitch anymore. So above 10 is just adding airiness, spaciousness. So any peaks and stuff up there is alright, as long as it's not too big. Yeah. Next step, look for. So this first step, basically what it does, it makes gives you a fair judgment. So that way you can fairly judge the frequency response of whatever headphone or earphone you're gonna analyze. So that's what matching the area above the Harmon curve and the area below does. I'll show you later when I analyze the graphs. If you don't understand, or you can go back to my frequency response video. I explain everything. Okay, step number 2, look for large deviations from Harmon curve. So any large deviations from Harmon curve is gonna break. It's gonna deal breaker. It's gonna sound like crap, right? So look for something that's between 10 and anywhere from like around 10 to 20 dB peaks or dips. Those are deal breakers. Okay. Step number 3, break the headphone or earphone curve into sections. So for example, bass, mids, and highs, and then you compare the peaks or dips in each section relative to each other. And any peak between 3 and 9 kHz that competes with the fundamental 3K peak is a massive deal breaker. So if you watch my previous video, you'll understand how important the 3K peak is, right? It's so important. It replicates. It's there to replicate the ear resonance, because we don't hear flat. So when you're hearing a flat speaker, well, a flat measured, if it's measured flat by a microphone, but we're not microphones, we're humans, right? We have ears, we have earlobes, we have outer ears that amplify the sound. So what you get is a 3K peak. Once the sound from a flat speaker gets to your eardrums, there's actually a peak at 3K that's around 10 to 12 dB. Okay. And additionally, compare the overall average amplitude of each section relative to one another. So by doing that, you can predict the sound signature. So if overall the amplitude of the bass is higher than the mids and the treble, so it's going to be bass oriented. So we're talking about yeah. And if everything is on the Harmon curve, then it's pretty much neutral, balance. Yeah, that's what a flat speaker would sound like. If you're sitting in a room with some flat measuring speakers, Harmon curve is what they would sound like. Yeah, so if there's more treble, the average amplitude of the treble section is overall higher than the bass and mids, then it's going to be bright and treble oriented. Rarely mid or vocal oriented. I don't see any headphones or earphones that's really mid or vocal oriented. Oh, there are some. So that depends mostly on the 1 to 3K rise. The rise up to 3K peak. So if you overdo that rise, then vocals will sound overly forward. Yeah, this stuff makes a lot more sense if you watch my previous video. Or if you're too lazy, just check out the document. I made a document for the previous video which explains frequency response curves and how to analyze them. Okay, let's look at the graphs. So, clinical, famous guy on Reddit who pretty much has graphed every single IEM. So you can check out his website here. Pretty good website. Right, he ranks like every single IEM there is on the market. He's tried out pretty much every single IEM on the market. Look how many that is, crazy, right? And he ranks them. And he's graphed pretty much all of them also, most of them I'd say. So yeah, very useful resource for anyone who wants to analyze graphs. So he's got a graph database also. So he uses the same microphone as the industry standard. IEC 60135, yeah, whatever bullcrap. I'll start do measurements myself later. You'll see my setup. I don't need any of this. Watch, I'll do it for $2. For $2, I'll have a full rig. It'll be as accurate as this, okay? Yeah, but this is great because you don't need to apply much compensation. You just stick it in and pretty much gives an accurate graph. So this coupler, that's what they call it. Well, it's just another name for a microphone. Coupler is something that transfer one form of energy to another. So you're getting sound waves to electrical signals, and from that you can create a graph. So this thing simulates this IEC 600,300,500,600 compliant in-ear simulator. So it simulates the ear canal. That's what this thing does. Oh, I forgot to turn on my mouse. I mean, yeah, it's easier for you to see my mouse now. Yeah, you can see all the graphs here, Andromeda, whatever. Yep. Okay, great source. You can check out his Reddit here. Yeah, I don't really agree with his ranking list, and yeah, I've never really agreed with anyone because I don't think no one really knows how to read frequency response curves. Everyone's doing graphs these days. Even the worst reviewers are doing graphs, but it means nothing if you can't read it. What's the point of doing graphs? So yeah, in the future I won't be doing much graphs. I'll just look at other people, clinical and great source already. Don't need to do my own graph. Okay, let's have a look. BGVP DM6, right? That's how it looks like. This means nothing to someone who can't read frequency curves, right? They'll probably say, oh, it looks pretty flat. From 20 to 3K, it looks like pretty much flat, right? Someone who can't read the curves. Obviously not. Looks like 7 dB base hump, you can see 7.5. Massive peak around 6.5, 6.3K. Right, but to a normal naive consumer, they just see, oh, flat curve, good. Or slightly, just a slight bump here doesn't mean anything to me. That's what the normal audio consumer would say. Okay, so, but who am I to trust this graph, right? Do we trust him? Yeah, I would say so. Let's look at one of the most accurately graphed and most well-known graph earphone, which is the Etymologic ER4 SR, right? So this earphone, pretty much every single unit they sell, they include a frequency response curve with every single earphone they sell. That shows that the earphone is frequency, the left and right channels are matched perfectly, and it also shows the frequency response. This thing's like $400 or $500, so yeah, pretty good customer service. So this is Clinical's graph, right? So we see a rise starting from around 1K to around 2.6, 2.7K, right? Let's look at Etymonics graph. So this graph is from Etymotic themselves. People who made this ER4SR. So it starts rising earlier, so around 700 hertz, and then peaks around 2.7, so like Clinical. So you can say Clinical is probably, yeah, his graph isn't that great, around 600 to 1K, but pretty close, right? ER4SR in the blue doesn't really start rising. It's not much of a rise here anyway, so it's kind of negligible. Let's see, around 10 dB peak from 1K to 2.7K peak. So yeah, around 10 dB. All right, nice roll off after 2.7, nice roll off after 2.7, and then it dips. The dip bottoms out at around 7K, dip bottoms out around 7.5K, yeah, and it bottoms out slightly below the 1K, the amplitude at 1K, slightly below amplitude at 1K, peaks at 10K, peaks at 9K here, so that's a bit too early, and then rolls off. Yeah, this one retains the Etymonics graph shows that it retains the frequency response, the amplitude up all the way until like I think 16K. That's where it's tested to have to cut off in frequency. But yeah, Clinical shows that it goes to 20K. Pretty much every headphone or earphone goes to 20K. Should probably go to like infinity. It's just you just have to have the right equipment to measure. It just rolls off so much. See, pretty much like a 30 dB difference. So that's every 10 dB is twice perceived loudness is reduced by 2. 20 dB is 2 to the power of 2, so 4 times less loud. It's around 30 dB from, let's say, the 7K. So yeah, pretty negligible. Anyways, what I'm trying to show is that Clinical is trustworthy. So yeah, kind of ignore the 10K plus. Doesn't really matter anyway because it's just adding airiness and spaciousness. Okay, let's analyze Clinical's graph. So I've overlaid the Harmon curve. And so what first step of the objective sound channel is, first step of my 3-step guideline is to match the area above and below, right? So let's look area above the Harmon curve, area below the Harmon curve, area below the Harmon curve. Okay, it looks pretty even. So area above the Harmon curve is pretty equal to the area below the Harmon curve. Bring it down a bit more actually. I think there's a bit too much below. Yeah, that's about good. Okay, so what do we see? Okay, bloated bass, right? You know, this region, 100 to around 700 hertz. Bass rises way too early. 700 hertz rises way too early. Should be no more than 500 hertz because the fundamental frequencies of vocals. So I've explained all of this in my frequency analysis video, so it makes a lot more sense if you watch it. I also do demos to prove my point that the fundamental frequencies is usually around 200 to 1K. Oh, that's for vocals, so you don't want too much of a boost in this area. Otherwise, your vocal is going to sound muddy. And that's why the Harmon curve doesn't start rising until around 200 Hertz, but I don't think that's, yeah, the rise is a bit too late. I think should rise a bit earlier, up around 3, 4, 500, unless you're a loud listener. I'll explain to you later, equal loudness contours. Right? So 700 Hertz starts rising way too early. Right? Harmon curves rise, it starts rising around 200 Hertz. So it's going to be muddy, right? Muddy sound, bloated bass, way too much at 200 Hertz, so bloated bass. So you're going to get ample amounts of snare and kick drums, rolled off sub bass over here from 30 to 50, slightly rolled off. I don't think it will bother too many people. Only like 4 dB, not bad. Most of the bass is usually above 50 anyway, unless you're listening to like hip hop and stuff. Sometimes it gets real low. You got that really low sub bass. Let's look at the rest. So 1K to 3K. Yeah, 3K is way too less energy, around 10 dB below Harmon. So vocals are gonna suffer a lot. Not gonna get the detail and the presence in the treble. Also suffer from vocals gonna suffer because the overtones and harmonics. So that's above the fundamental frequency. So fundamental frequency is the frequency we hear at. So that's the pitch. So like let's say middle C, right? But then you have overtones and harmonics which make the sound it is, right? That's what differentiates a middle C being sung by a human and a piano. That's why they sound different. Humans and piano sound different because of the harmonics and overtones. So yeah, you're missing this fundamental 3K peak, which is replicating the ear resonance. So massive deal breaker already. Like, you don't have to look at anything else. Just, in fact, it actually dips at 3K. It's horrible. Right, and then you have this massive 6.5K peak, which is very unnatural, and it towers above everything else by 10 dB. Right, even above the bass by around 5 dB. So you can get definite harshness, definitely harsh in the highs. Yeah, and mids are going to be very recessed and lacking a lot of presence. Horrible. And yeah, roll off after 9K is okay. Probably too fast here. After 8K, sorry. Too fast. Yeah, I don't really agree with the Harmon curve too. This is the IEM curve made by Harmon is only new also, so I like something more like the Sony target curve that drops off a bit faster but like kind of linear instead of Harmon which goes from 3K and then doesn't really roll off but like kind of stays very slowly, rolls off, and then from like 8K just drops off really fast. You're just losing a bit too much energy if you drop off this fast. So yeah, I think something more like straight down like this. You're watching my mouse would be good. That's what Sony target curve is. When they made the Sony MH1 and MH750 and 755, I think they found that the target curve even before Harmon did. So good job for them. They found out what humans prefer most. Anyways, you can use the cheat sheet to refer back when analyzing the graphs. This cheat sheet is always helpful. Oh, by the way, this is by geez, forgot to mention. This is from DIY Audio Heaven. Great website for learning about audio science. So check them out. DIY Audio Heaven. Great website for learning about audio science. learn all about amps, electronics. Yeah, the guys are like engineers, I think. Electrical engineer, I think one of them. Yeah, you can learn about CSD, impedance, harmonic distortion, how to read frequency response. Yeah, but like I wouldn't recommend looking at their frequency response curves. They do some weird stuff. The measurements aren't very accurate. Anyways, this cheat sheet is from them right here. I don't know if they made it, but that's the only website I can find it from. So yeah, check them out. DIY Audio Heaven. So you got definitely muddy, boomy bass. If you looked at this sheet, right, so 100 to 200 over Harman. Harman is neutral. If you're wondering why this is flat and why Harman is curved like this, and I'm calling Harman neutral, check out my frequency response, how to analyze frequency response video. I explain all of that. So it's got to do with compensated versus raw curves. We're looking at the raw curve right now. But check out my previous video if you don't understand the difference between compensated and raw. Okay, what else? So you're lacking clarity and detail according to the sheet, right? Way too less energy, around 2 and 3K. Yeah, I wouldn't call it laid back and romanticized. This is way too low. Actually dips at 3K. Right? At least have like a 10 dB rise. The Harman rises, I think, from around the lowest point in the mid, so around 250, to the 3K peak is around 14 dB. And yeah, look at this peak at around, what else? Peak around 6 to 6.5K. So around 6.5K. So any peaks around here. So it'll be edgy, sharp, sibilant, over, bright, piercing, sharp. Yeah, you name it, horrible. And then too much of a roll off from after 8K. So you're going to be lacking power and drums. Right, this is where the attack of the drum is. Most of the meat of the drum is in the bass from around 100 to 200, but especially snares. If you look at snares, it's got the initial frequency. The attack of the snare is very dominant in the mids to highs, even goes all the way up to like 20K even. That's why snare drums sound snappier and higher frequency, higher pitch than the kick drums. So they have a lot of energy in the highs also. So it's very important to not have too much roll off from 9 to 10K. So what else? Yeah, it's just horrible. How do you even call this neutral? Okay, this is also another graph by Clinical. Put a link to DIY Audio Heaven. Jesus. Come on. Come on. There you go. So that's where you'll find this cheat sheet. And yeah, check out their site. It's so good for learning about. It's got so much information on sound science. It's such a valuable site. But don't look at their measurements. Okay. For measurements, go to Inner Fidelity or ratings.com. Anyways, so yeah, this is another graph by Clinical. So this is using another coupler, another in-ear simulator. So that's the result you get, the difference you get. So with one microphone, one in-ear simulator. So different versions of this microphone yields different frequency curves, right? But you still see the main characteristics. So this 4.5K peak is definitely there still, right? This 6.5K peak is still there. And then you see another small peak at around 7K, and way too fast roll off that there's way too much roll off after the 8k peak. So yeah. Now let's look at bad guy good audio graph. Oh, by the way, I think Clinical rated this like a B plus on his ranking list, so I don't know what he's going on about. Yeah, he's got the measurement here, but like, does he know how to read it? I don't know. All this placebo and hype getting to people's brain, and they'll think anything is neutral. Okay, let's look at another person's graph. So bad guy, good audio graph. Look at his graph. Sorry. So you can check out his website here, Audioholics. Pretty entertaining guy, but his reviews is, yeah, he's getting better though. Starting to do graphs, so I admire that, I respect that. Graphs are so important, but his knowledge on sound science is just absolutely horrible. Okay, you can check out his YouTube channel. Yeah, I don't know why you call yourself bad guy. Are you a bad guy? Just look at, yeah, you can go to his community and check out his graphs. Very useful resource, his graphs. So check that out. But his opinions are, yeah, they're pretty off. And his ability to read graphs is pretty bad, not completely off. So yeah, don't trust anything later than around 3 weeks from the time I'm making this video. Because yeah, only 2 weeks ago he got the proper coupler, the microphone in-ear simulator. So before that he's got some weird graphs because he was using some cheap DIY microphone like this. Yeah, something like that. And you just have a tube and then you can make your own DIY measurement. That's why everyone's doing measurements these days. No one seems to know how to read them though. Just have to look legit. Just put a measurement in your review and you look legit. And then everyone will be sucking on your toes. So yeah, don't disregard everything from, yeah, anything past 2 weeks ago. So before we got this coupler. Apparently this is the same one that Clinical uses. The same in-ear simulator. So anyways, yeah, this is where his graphs is. So this links straight to the community, which we're already on anyway. So yeah, graphs. Okay, let's see. Oh yeah, this is what he says. Even with his new improved rig, my DM6 did not show a treble dominating set. Treble peaks are same as bass. BGGA. I don't know what he's trying to imply from that. Is it supposed to mean that his earphones sound fine? I don't know what he's trying to do. Is he trying to defend it still? I think he's the original guy who hyped up this DM6. BGVP KRST DM659 whatever. So let's go. Step 1 of my guideline is to get the area above and below the Harmon curve the same. So shift it up and down. Area above, below, area above, area below. Too much area below. Let's shift it down. So around there. Area below. Area below, area below, area above. Pretty much even now, right? Let's have a look. Still the same rolled off bass. Same rolled off bass. Oh, sorry, gotta shift it so that the frequency lines line up. Yeah, he's using some really weird scale also. think this thing is using some software that costs like $20 or $40. Yeah, I'll show you how to do measurements for $6 in another video once my microphone arrives from China. For like $2 actually. Okay, so base rolled off, just like Clinical's graph. Still way too bloated base, right? So muddiness, like 10 dB too much at 250 Hertz, right? So definitely muddy vocals and stuff. Still another dip at 3K, so just like Clinical. Yeah, like 10 dB below Harman target. So you're gonna lack detail in the treble. You're also lacking vocal presence and stuff, because the overtones and harmonics go all the way up here. And peak at 4.5K, so just like Clinical, powering above everything else in the mids, right? And even in the treble. So unnatural peak at 4.5K, should be peaking at 3K, right? Closer to 2.5 is even okay, because if you look at my previous video, I'll show the ear resonance graph. It shows the peak in ear resonance when we're listening to, let's say, a speaker in a room is around 2.7, 2.5, 2.7K. So yeah, earlier peak is okay, but not later peak. 3.5 is okay. 4 is pushing it, right? 4.5K is definitely too much. Okay, let's look at another thing. 6K peak. So just like Clinical, it's pretty much on point with 4K peak. Another peak at 9K. Yeah, but and another peak at around 11K. So yeah, same thing. Deal breaker is a 3K straight away. That's what you should be looking for. Anything that doesn't have a peak at 3K is a deal breaker. Massively bloated bass. So if you're gonna say this thing sounds very neutral, right? So for anyone who owns the M50X, that Audio Technica M50X, and you own a DM6, and you're gonna say that the DM6 is neutral, right? And you're not gonna complain about the bass, but you complain about the M50X's bloated bass, then you're just a massive hypocrite. Or your ears are, or in your brain is just mush. I don't know what you're hearing, because look at this. People crap on the M50X for like bloated bass and harsh highs, but look at this. Right, this is the definition of V-shape. The Harman curve is balanced. For someone who doesn't know the background behind how Harman curve was formed and how humans here, they would say that they would look at the Harman curve and say it's V-shaped, but it's not. This is balanced. Okay. So let's compare graphs from BGVP and Clinical. So pretty much the same, because I'm pretty sure they're using the same coupler, IEC 6013569669, sucky 69. I don't care what. Okay. So yeah, pretty much the same base, all the way up to 3K, all the way up to the 4.5K peak, pretty much the same. Yeah, it's just this 6K peak where they differ a lot, so around 6 or 7 dB. So Clinical shows a massive peak at around 6K, 6.5K. So this peak is at 6.5K, while Bad Guy Good Audio is around, it's not that high. It's actually below the 4.5K peak even. So yeah, I don't know, quality control or something. That's what people say. That's their excuse. Or it just could be insertion depth or something. But yeah, you can tell already that below, let's say 5K, they're pretty much spot on. So you can say that below here is pretty much accurate. Yeah. So above here starts rolling off after around 8K for Clinical. Bad Guy Good Audio is still going on, still tipping and peaking up to around 12, 11K. Yeah, he has a peak at 11K. and then it starts dropping off. They both show a peak around 16k. Nothing to worry about. Like I said, this just adds airiness, spaciousness. Yeah. So still no 3k peak on either of their measurements. I can try to be biased and lenient and try to argue, oh, but there's a 2k peak. It's quite close to 3k peak, right? But let's look at how small this 2k peak is. Like 2.5 dB. If you look at the scale, this is around 5 dB, so 70 down to 65. This doesn't even go up to 70. This from this lowest point at 65. Yeah, it's around halfway between 70 and 65, so around only 2.5 dB peak at 2k. If you're going to shift the peak at 3k down to 2k, at least make it like 10 dB or something. And a peak at 2k would cause overly shouty and forward vocals anyway, so yeah, thin, bright, harsh, too clear. That's what a peak at 2k does. So no matter how you look at this from whoever's graph, it still looks horrible, right? Anyways, let's go to BGVP themselves. These are graphs from the company, right? Misleading marketing tactics by audio companies. I see this a lot. Look how flat it is. Right, they manipulate the curve and they apply some smoothing, right? And then I don't know what they do, whatever else they do, but it makes it look completely flat. Or also look at the scale, right? So close to each other. So they're squishing it down to make it look flat. But naive audio consumers don't know anything. They just think flat means flat. But that's not how humans hear. Right? Unless you're a microphone, or you, right? Microphones would enjoy a completely flat sound. I don't think there's any microphones watching this. Well, if you're a microphone, you don't have eyes anyway. Or if you're a human who has no outer ear, you don't have the earlobes or any of that, and your eardrums, you don't have an ear canal, and your eardrum is right outside, in line with your jawbone, then you would appreciate a flat sound, but you don't. And if your eardrum, if you didn't have an ear canal, you wouldn't be able to wear the DM6 IEMs anyway. Yeah, it's graph number 1, very misleading, as you can see, completely flat. This is graph number 2 from them, and you can check it out on their Facebook page if you don't believe me. Alright, look at that. BGVP DM6. Alright. So once again, completely flat. Some odd scale here. Look, they messed around all the numbers. It was so hard to figure out which line was which number. Right, and they also flattened it. They squished the frequency curve vertically so that it looks completely flat. Right. DM6 is coming. Pre-order with your local dealer. Oh, thank God I don't have a local dealer. Okay, let's have a look. So the first graph, I'll try to stretch it back out so that we can at least analyze it. So 130, 120. So you can see here the scale is correct. Scale 10 dB, 0 dB. The hertz will line up the frequency. 10k, 4k, 1k, 100 hertz line. Right, so first step is to amplitude match. A Harmon curve, shift it up and down. Area above equals area below, area below, area above, area below. I'd say that is pretty even. Yeah, ignoring everything above 10k and ignoring everything below 20 hertz, but they only graph up to 20 hertz anyway. Once again, same story. Lacking sub bass, bloated mid bass, muddy vocals. completely lacking at 3k peak. So a dip at 3k, right? Same hump around 1.7k, 1.2k, from 1 to 2k, same hump as the others, right? Peak at 4.5k. That towers above everything else. Horrible. Another peak at around 6.5k. Also pretty much on line with the 4.5k peak. Absolutely horrible. So you're going to get harshness. But lacking mids, recessed vocals. And then you got rolled off in the upper treble, so in the highs. Roll off after the 6k peak, 6.5k peak. Very fast roll off, so yeah, you're not gonna get the attack from the drums, the kick drums, the snare drums. Very important. Have some energy around 9 to 10k for that, like I explained in my frequency analysis video. Okay, let's look at the other graph. Maybe it's better. Not tells the same story. So sub bass lacking, mid bass is too much by around 5 dB. Again, muddiness, no 3k peak, lack of vocal presence, lack of treble detail. 4.5k peak that towers above everything else. So harshness, once again, another peak at 6.5k. That's even higher than the 4.5k peak in this graph. So like 5-7 dB above everything else. Definite harshness. Another peak at 8k and then decent roll off. Kind of too fast. Not as bad as the others, I think. Yeah, still too fast. Roll off after 8k. So there you go. Okay, let's compare all the graphs. So clinical versus BGGA versus BGVP. If you haven't noticed already, that's short for bad guy good audio. So let's compare all three of the graphs. So with the BGVP, I only took this graph because this yellow graph is the resolution is pretty bad and it's kind of thick, so it's kind of harder to analyze. So I took this graph. So I overlaid all three. So compared to BGVP's graph, BGGA and clinical both have more bass by around 5 dB more. Right. Both of their graphs show roll off in the sub bass. So you see this tilt going downwards. Some roll off in the sub bass is evident. Yeah, peak at around 1 to 2k. This hump is very similar for all the graphs. Yeah, all of them are lacking the 3k peak. And all of them show a 4.5k peak that towers above everything else. So harshness, 6.5k peak. All of them show a 6.5k peak, but to varying degrees. Right, clinical has a massive 6.5k peak. BGVP shows something in the middle of BGGA, which is this dark blue graph, and clinical, which is this red and blue. And BGVP is kind of in between. So it's safe to conclude that there is a peak at 6.5k, and it's probably around as high as the 4.5k peak, or at least somewhere in between clinicals and BGGA. So BGVP, their measurement of the 6.5k peak is probably the best one to look at, kind of in the middle ground between clinical and BGGA. So this BGVP graph is probably the most representative. So after that, all of them pretty much roll off except for BGGA. BGVP and clinical's graph pretty much roll off exactly by the same amount after 8k. They're pretty much identical after 8k roll off. Small peak here, down, BGVP dips even lower, but all of them also show a 16k peak to varying degrees. So yeah, nothing to worry about much though. Anything above 10k or 11 to 12k peak could be problematic. It's a bit too close to yeah, our sensitivity in the treble. So yeah, it's just BGVP and clinical is pretty much identical after 8k. It's just BGGA has another peak at around 9k. Now that could be due to the insertion depth. So I've talked about it in my frequency analysis video. It could be due to resonance within the E canal, so sound bouncing around the E canal. So this could be varied. This peak could be shifted depending on the insertion depth. And so if you did like university physics, or maybe, oh, I don't know about year 11 and 12 physics if they teach this, but in university physics you learn how to calculate resonances in tubes, right? So you can vary the tube, the length of the tube, and you get different resonances and stuff. Standing waves, all that stuff. It's been a while since I've done that stuff. Physics was horrible. The lecturer was horrible. Anyways, yeah, so they all tell pretty much the same story. So very problematic. Definitely some problems in the highs, in the treble highs. Even if we look at BGVP's graph and just look at their base, right? Let's look at it from a bias standpoint and imagine we're rooting for the DM6. You still have base. You don't have the base bloat like clinical and BGGA measured, but you still have a completely flat base, which is not how we hear, right? We're very insensitive to base, so that's why we need a hump, like the Harmon curve suggests. So you need some kind of base hump, and base is so important for enjoyment of music. I've explained that in my frequency analysis video also. It carries the rhythm, and rhythm is in our blood. One of the first things we did as humans was probably, one of the first man-made instruments was probably like two sticks being hit together, or like hitting a stick to a tree, or clapping two stones together to create rhythm and dancing, right? Just look at the Africans and the various drums they use. Right? They just dance to drums. I know there's other instruments, but yeah. Drums is so essential because bass carries the rhythm. Rhythm is essential for enjoyment of music. Evolution, you can tell so much from it. Fight or flight response, right? Evolution, you didn't have time to think, oh, would the lion eat me? What if it tripped over? It won't get to me in time. I'll just sit here, right? Your brain is wired. The amygdala, that's how you spell it. That's how you say it, right? Your emotions, your first response, it's like the first responder. It's unconscious responder. You don't have any rationality in your thinking, right? So it's fight or flight. Within a split second, you're probably running away as you see a lion. And then maybe after 10 seconds or so, you realize, oh, it's a fake lion. This is 2019. Some guy's pranking me. He's wearing a lion suit, running around in the streets or something, right? Evolution tells you everything. Anyways, yeah, none of these graphs show positive signs. Okay, so let's go a bit into subjectivity and preferences, right? So it's got to appeal to someone, right? This sound signature's got to appeal to someone, right? No. Can't get a neutral or natural sound without a 3K peak. So all you audiophiles chasing super flat response know you can't get a flat graph for earphones and headphones and expect a flat response. That's not how we hear. We need a 3K peak. It's so important. Look at the ear resonance graph. I explained this in my frequency response analysis video. Right, okay, so let's delve into two personal factors, which we can also explain through science and objectivity. So hearing loss and volume people listen at. So will people with hearing loss, so either from exposure to loud noise or age-related, this is a fancy name for it, presbycusis, so kind of like presbyopia, which is age-related long-sightedness. Right, so do people with hearing loss enjoy this earphone? Would they? No, because hearing loss reduces the ability to hear high frequencies. So this is a graph from the University of Sydney in one of the lecture tutorials for the psychology class. Forgot to add a link. I'll put a link below in the description below in this video, and also update this document to have a link. Okay, so older people who have the most trouble with hearing, the 3 to 6 kilohertz region, right? As you can see here, their bass is fine. So the hearing of bass is fine. So all the way down to like 31 hertz, they're still on point with someone who's at their peak hearing age around teenage years. So like a 20-year-old person. So after 20 years old, hearing pretty much goes downhill. Yeah, I explained hearing loss also in my frequency analysis video. It's so important to understand hearing loss. And also equal loudness contours I'll explain later. They affect the frequency response curve so much. I mean, how we hear and our preferences. I mean, yeah. So as you can see, we have a lot of troubles. People with hearing loss would have a lot of trouble from 3 to 6K. So they'll probably prefer like some peaks around in this area to make up for it. Look at this, someone at 60 by 4K, they're like 40 dB down, which is like inaudible, basically inaudible compared to the bass. For them at 4K, they pretty much can't hear 4K. Yeah, I explained also about the formula for perceived loudness. So it's like 2 to the power of delta sigma. Right, great site for learning about like electricity and physics behind sound. So this is a formula for perceived loudness. So a 40 dB decrease would be 16 times less loud. So that's a formula 2 to the power of delta L. Delta L is change in decibels over 10. Right, so 2 to the power of 40 on 10, 2 to the power of 4 equals 16. So someone who's 60 would hear 4K, any sound in 4K 16 times less loud than they would hear sounds at 31 hertz. Crazy, right? 16 is pretty much inaudible. 16 times. 2 times is already very soft. 4 times less loud is like pretty much inaudible. 16 is like, yeah, definitely. Okay, so this is how a person with presbycusis would hear the DM6 according to the above graph. Right, so not everyone's hearing would be this compromised by the time, let's say, they're 40. If you lock yourself in like an anechoic chamber your whole life and don't expose yourself to any sound, your hearing's pretty much going to be on point. Oh, but you got to train your brain also to hear sound, so sometimes expose it to some sounds, right? Because this has to do with neural degeneration, so it's inevitable, right? So kind of like old people, how when we get older we lose our memory also. That's why it's so important to train our brain. Train your brain. So according to this graph, let's say out of 40-year-old person, right? So by they start rolling off from around 500 Hertz. So by 1K, they're already down around 4 dB. So that's minus 4 dB or 1K, right? Simple maths, 2K, they're down by around 8 dB. 2K down minus 8 dB from Harmon curve around here. 4K, they're around 15 dB down. So that's around 1.5 times less perceived loudness already. 15 dB at 4K, 5, 10, 15. At 8K, they're around 6 or 11 dB down. 5, 10, sorry, 5, 10, 11, yeah, 11 dB below the curve. So if we amplitude match, go through the guidelines. By the way, this is how they perceive the frequency response a 40-year-old would perceive, right? The frequency response of the earphones don't change. It's just your brain has a hard time hearing. So that's how it would sound like, this orange curve. So let's shift it up. Area above equals area below. And we ignore all this blue and red line from now on. We only look at the orange line and the treble. So area above equals area below. I would say around there, right? Area below down to orange curve equals area above the Harmon curve in the base. Yeah. So what do you see? Definitely bloated bass, even more bloated than how a normal person would hear, right? 10 dB instead of the 5 dB bloat. Also, 5 dB is not enough for an earphone. Earphone should rise up to around by like 10 dB, right? Look at the Harmon curve, rises by around 10 dB in the bass. For headphones, a 5 dB rise is appropriate, but for earphones, you need around 10. Because, yeah, also depends on insertion depth. So, yeah, I explain everything. It makes a lot more sense if you look at my frequency analysis video. So occlusion effect, also resonance in the low frequency due to like your torso, your head, right? Because earphones bypass all of that. It goes straight in your ear canal. And it even goes deep in your ear canal. Sometimes it bypasses your ear canal. So kind of like the adiomotics. But yeah. Okay, so more bloated bass than what a normal person would even hear. So massive bass. Completely lacking 3K peak. And yeah, pretty much everything above 1K is just horrible. A 40-year-old person would hear complete lack in detail. But you can be a 40-year-old and have hearing that looks like the 30-year-old. Just reduce your noise exposure, right? Don't listen so loud. All these earphone and headphone reviewers, right, they listen at crazy volumes. I can hear their music through their headphones and earphones, even through the videos that I'm watching. So that's when you really got to start thinking about what volume you're listening at, and you better start thinking about, do I have hearing loss? And if you do, should you still be doing reviews, right? Well, should you be doing reviews without any graphs or just pure subjectiveness and stuff without telling people that you have hearing loss? Is that responsible? And I say, yeah, that's how a 40-year-old person, according to the graph, would hear. All bass. So unless if you're a massive bass head who has hearing loss, then yeah, I'd probably recommend this. Also, there's quite a bit of a peak from 4 to 6, 7K, so which is good for someone with hearing loss, right? So you save some of the detail. Usually, most earphones roll off after 3K peak, so you're gonna even have a worse curve than this, even a bigger dip. But yeah, you still have the problem with no 3K, right? Because people with hearing loss also suffer from all the way from 3 to 6K is the worst hearing range. Yeah, it dips the most. So you want even higher 3K peak than the Harman curve recommends. But that's not the case here. You have no 3K peak at all, so you're going to lose naturalness. That's not how humans hear. You can't have flat here at 3K. You need a peak. You need a bigger peak even if you're someone with hearing loss. So yeah. But these peaks in 4 to like 7K is good. They retain some of the details in the highs. And someone with perfect hearing on the majority of people, this is absolutely horrible, so unnatural. Any peak from around 3 to 9 is unnatural. Small peak around 9 to 10 is okay, but I haven't heard that yet from my earphone. I can confirm that it's good for headphones, and I'll explain later in the equal loudness contours why. And 9 to 10K peak is alright, a small one. So yeah, so people with hearing loss, not. What about people who listen at extremely high or low volumes? Oh, okay. Let's look at someone who listens at extremely high volumes. So let's say 100 dB. This is the equal loudness contours. If you want to learn how to read it, you can look at my frequency analysis video. I also explain this. It's very important. So pretty much at 100 dB, your hearing is a lot more balanced than, let's say, if you're listening to at 20 dB. Right? A phon is the amplitude at 1K. The 100 phon is 100 dBs at 1 kilohertz, which is 1,000 hertz. Right? So like 1 milligram, 1,000 milligram is 1 kilogram. So yeah. So high volume listeners would prefer less bass, and bass that rises lower in the frequency range, because the bass is pretty much on point with all the mids and highs, right? But if you look at a low volume listener, bass gets extremely hard to hear. Let's say someone at 40 dB compared to 100 dB. 100 dB bass doesn't get really hard to hear until you're around 200 hertz, and then it starts to rise, right? So let's say at 200 hertz, to perceive the same volume you get at 100 dB at 200 hertz, you'd have to raise the volume to around 130 dB at 20 hertz just to hear the same loudness. You can confirm this yourself on a tone generator. I've done it for you also in my previous video. The bass sounds a lot softer compared to the highs and mids. And even highs also, they get a lot harder to hear once you approach 20K. Okay, so bass doesn't get really hard to hear until below 200 hertz. But for someone who's listening at, let's say, 60 phon, right? Okay, their bass rises. Their bass starts getting hard to hear from around 9, 8, 7, 600 hertz. Right, that's why I say anything around 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, around 600 hertz. That's why I say bass shouldn't rise any higher than around 500 hertz, because I doubt there's anyone who listens at, let's say, even 660 phon. Right? I'd say the average person would listen around 70 to 80 dB. 70 to 85. 85 is pushing it. You're getting into hearing loss range. Okay. And if you listen at low volumes, you can train your brain also to pick up, to be more sensitive to the bass and the highs. So kind of like brain training for the people who have hearing, who have dementia and stuff. Right? Age-related hearing loss can be reduced. Reduce your exposure to noise. and reduce your volume so your ears become more sensitive. Your brain becomes more sensitive at processing these sounds. So yeah, someone who listens at low volumes, let's say 60 fon, would appreciate a bass that starts rising from around 600 hertz. That Harman curve rises a bit too low down. Around 200 hertz it starts rising, the bass hump, which is, I'd say, too low for perfect for high volume listeners. For me, I listen very low, like extremely low, like 2 dots for the Apple earbuds on my iPod. So yeah, most people would probably appreciate a higher rising bass. So unless you're a loud volume listener, you don't want bass, then you wouldn't really appreciate bass that rises from 200 hertz below, because then the bass would be a bit too anemic. Bass for someone who listens at 60 fon is already getting hard around 600 hertz, thus rising really rapidly. If you get even lower, let's say at 0 fon, which is the threshold of hearing, so that's how you get 0 dB. And 0 dB is referenced as our threshold of hearing. We can't hear any lower sounds at 1K, right? But our ears are very sensitive at 3K. So actually you can hear down to minus like 7 dB. So fun fact, you can hear up to minus 7 dB if you're hearing a pure tone, so a sine wave at around 3K, 3.5K, where our hearing is most sensitive. Yeah. So also, high volume listeners would prefer less highs compared to low volume listeners, because the gap between the mids and the highs is reduced compared to someone who listens at very low volumes. No one listens down at 20 dB, but this is just better to illustrate. Kind of hard to look at the differences here. So if you look at the green arrow from our most sensitive point at around 3.5K to around 10K, right? You look at the arrow size, it's a lot longer down at 20 fon. The difference between 3.5 and the 10K, the difference is up at 80 fon is a lot smaller. So that's what that says is that our hearing is pretty much is more balanced, more even at 10K and 3.5K at higher levels. So you only need to increase to perceive the same loudness as you get at 3.5K at around 80 dB. You'd have to increase at 10K up to around 90 dB, 92 dB, 93 dB to perceive the same loudness at 3.5K. You get to perceive the same loudness, yeah. So you get what I mean. And lower volume listeners would prefer more highs, especially above 5K. So it rises a lot faster at lower volumes. The difference is a lot bigger. And we have the hardest time hearing at around 10 kilohertz in the highs. So overall, we're very insensitive to bass, insensitive to highs also. But when you start to approach around 16K, it gets a bit annoying. Kind of evens around the same level as the mids. But then after that, once you approach 20K, it gets impossibly hard to hear 20K. So yeah, so let's look at what we learned here so far and apply it. So bass starts rising from around 800 hertz. So if you're like, what, I don't know if there's anyone who's listening around average amplitude of around 40 dB. Right, some very low volumes, and yeah, you probably appreciate it. If you listen at low volumes, you probably appreciate this high rising bass, right? If you listen at high volumes, this bass will sound absolutely bloated and muddy, massive. It will sound massive, right? But even then, for low volume listeners, you want more bass, not some roll off in sub bass. You want even more sub bass, right? At least with Harman curve, it's flat. But I don't really agree with Harman. I think you should go up more, kind of like the Sony target curve is pretty much on point. They really know what they're doing, except the earphones don't sound anything like Harman, most of them. Except for the MH1, tuned very close to Harman. Anyways, back to this. So sub-bass rolled off still, so not going to please someone who listens at low volumes. Right, you're missing 9 to 10k, which is very hard for someone who listens at volume, so no. And this hump is not enough. Remember, Harman IEM goes up like 10 dB. Right, so from around 8 to 9 dB from 200 up. From 200 down to 20 Hertz is around 8 to 9 dB difference. This is only like 7 dB. Not enough. Still missing 3k peak. There's nothing you can really do. Or 3k peak gets 3k around 3.5k, and 3k gets a bit easier to. It gets a bit more boosted and easier to hear. We're more sensitive at higher volumes, but not by much. See the change from, let's say, the difference between this. Yeah, this dip doesn't rise by much. So compared to, so it only rises around a few dBs more. So unless you're listening around 150 dBs on average, you're not going to have this hump going up. I mean, you're not going to have this, you're not going to be able to compensate for the lack of 3k peak. And if you're listening 150 dB, let's say you're someone who listens 150 dB, which no one does, it'll probably burst your eardrum, right? 90 dB is jackhammer. It's equivalent to jackhammer. 150 dB is going to be crazy, okay? It's going to burst your eardrum. That's like sending right at the nozzle of a gun. Even if you listen at very high volumes, you'll have this overly bloated bass, so it doesn't make sense. So none of these people who listen at high or low volumes would appreciate the sound. Okay. So what is the selling point of this junk? Why is it so popular? Got the page. Just look at the page. From BGVP's own store themselves. So what do we have here? Yeah, devious marketing, flattened frequency curve, like I showed you before. Right, bam, there you go. Not just on their Facebook page, but also in the description of the advertisement for this $200 IEM, for this tiny IEM made in China by some sweatshop workers. We get paid like $1 or $2, and the materials probably cost like $2 or $3 in total to make. Only a couple dollars. 2 or 3 is probably a bit low, but anyways, yeah, flattened graph, very misleading marketing hype. It's all the reviewers, you know who you are, right? You know, yeah, whoever's hyping this, you know who you are. Fancy logo, yeah, looks cool, right? These 3 kind of claws. Anyways, cool design. See-through, wow, amazing. You see all these wires and stuff. Got like 3 balls or something, and it's got tubes. So excited, it's got tubes, right? It doesn't matter if the frequency response is screwed up, it's not going to sound good. It doesn't matter what you do. Tubes or holes, or I don't care how many holes you got, how many drivers you got. It's got 5 BAs per earphone, right? 5 drivers stuffed into this shell, right? Not one, not two, not three, but 5 BAs. But people are drooling all over. 5 BAs. Well, must sound very good. Right, fancy cable. Right, some people have some weird obsession with cables. Does nothing. Right, and they include balance cable also. Balance cable. I'm pretty sure they include balance cable. And yeah, I'm gonna do another video in the future, part of my myth busting series. Balance cable is pretty much bullcrap. Right, it's just another marketing ploy. Good way to make money. I would be selling balance cables and balance amps too if I was a audio store. So much money, such good money. Some fancy cable, right? Some braided. Copper or whatever. Silver plated. Yeah, you want to see how much cables cost? This is AliExpress. If you go DHgate or Alibaba at the bulk sites, cost nothing. Right? Like $5. There you go. $11. Look at that. $4. Look how nice it is. I'm pretty sure you can get MMCX for like $2 even. Doesn't matter. It doesn't do anything to the sound unless in this day and age all wires are sufficient. Right? You shouldn't worry about the resistance. Yeah. Look at that braid. Turns a lot of people on for some reason. Oh, it's braided. It's silver. $5. There you go. Customizable fit. Yeah, okay. That's a good point. Customizable fit. For $240. So that's around 400 Australian dollars. 350, 400, 370 Australian dollars. Crazy. And inclusion of 989999 times 10 to the power of 39 different ear tips. Yeah, for some reason, that's what every high-end audio company does. It makes everyone drool. Wins everyone over. Oh, DM6 doesn't provide that much. $200, come on, give me more tips, just for fun. I'm not gonna use them anyway, but don't be stingy. Let's see how much it costs. Look at that, 52 cents. 10 pair, 33 cents. Tips cost nothing, I'm telling you. Spin fit, $5. Right? Foam, you can get for $2. $2, 3 pairs from KZ. Right? Don't buy the comply whatever and comply foams. They're all gonna get dirty and they're all gonna break down anyway. Get the cheap one. Comply foams probably cost like $15 for one. How many can I get? $2 for 3? I can get 7 times 3. I can get 21 of these just in case I lose them or something. I have 21 of these foam ear tips from KZ instead of one comply foam tips. So ear tips cost nothing. Don't fall for it. And the manufacturers buy them by the bulk, which costs even less. These probably cost like 20 cents for this 3-pack from this store. Probably bought it wholesale for like 30 cents or 50 cents. This whole thing and selling it for you for like $2. It compares well or even beats much more expensive IEMs. Andromeda killer, right? But the more expensive the headphone or earphone, the better it must sound, right? But everyone's thinking nowadays. Marketing is getting into people's head. Absolutely crazy. Let's look at the Andromeda graph, thanks to Clinical. If you look around on the internet, type in Andromeda graph, pretty much everyone has similar curve like this. You can see. Harmon curve, yeah. You can judge yourself. I'm not even going to do this. Don't be biased. I don't care how much you paid. If you own this, don't put all bias aside. Imagine you didn't own this. Just look how horrible it is. Right? Can't imagine how it would sound. Peak at around 7.5k. That towers above everything else. And this is the standards they're trying to compare the DM6 with. Just because it's more expensive. So they'll compare with this. I think it's logical to compare with this, right? Anyways, let's compare the DM6 versus the Andromedas, and let's see if the Andromeda's killers. If the DM6 really is an Andromeda killer. So in the black line, I've made it more clear by drawing this black line. That's the Andromeda, and this is the DM6, both by Clinical. Both graphed by Clinical. The Andromeda has even less base, right? But then less highs, so it's probably even more muddy because base is pretty much dominating. If you get the average amplitude of the whole base section, it's dominating over the highs, right? So you're losing detail from 2 to 6k. Yeah, no wonder people say DM6 is more detailed, right? Look how much more energy you're getting from around 48k. Yeah, it's going to cause harshness, but it's also going to lift the details because if you don't have any amplitude here, you're not going to get the detail. So it's going to be harsh, but yeah, it's going to be more detailed, of course, because it's louder from 4 to 8k. Amplitude is higher. So yeah, if I was to take one, I'd probably take the Andromeda because these treble peaks are absolutely nasty. I'd rather have a muddy, bassy headphone than a horrible headphone that is also muddy, but at the same time very harsh. Well, Andromeda is also harsh. Look at this massive 7.5k peak, but not as bad as DM6. Anyways, so let's look at some stupid excuses that some people make. Some of the owners of the DM6 make. You need a better source. It will sound a lot better. I see this everywhere. Yeah, no crap. If you have a better source, anything will sound better. It's like putting a Corolla. It's like comparing a Toyota Corolla on some bumpy pothole road compared to a Toyota Corolla on a smooth highway with asphalt. Of course, it's going to drive a lot smoother and perform a lot better on the smoother road, right? But if you put a Corolla versus even like a Tesla, yeah, on like a asphalt road, a highway which is well maintained and really flat and smooth, of course the Tesla or any other car will beat the Toyota Corolla, right? Okay, what's another thing? Try to not bash the DM6. Okay, effects of electrical impedance on sound and frequency response by Tal Hertzen from Inner Fidelity, great source for audio science also, and very objective reviewer, most level-headed reviewer out there. So could it be because of the output impedance of clinical source is not low enough, therefore alters the frequency response of the DM6? No. Right, look, the KZAS10 is 14 ohms compared to DM6, which is 20 ohms, which is even higher, so it should be affected even less by the output impedance of clinical source. And as you can see, KZAS10, if you didn't know, is also a multiple BA drive earphone. I think it has 4 BAs. DM6 has 5. And look how fine it's graphed out. Right? Still not the greatest earphone, but much better than DM6, right? Too much energy at 3K, right? Rise up from 1 to. Also, bass rise is this too much, right? Kind of the same problem as DM6. Bass rise is too high up in the frequency range, and yeah, at least it has some kind of 3K peak to replicate the ear resonance. And not nice peak at 5, 6K. It's competing with 3K peak, massive no-no. Yeah, after that it's pretty good. But yeah, I would probably take the AS10 over the DM6 any day still. Yeah, so if you don't understand what I mean by not the impedance, output impedance isn't low enough and altering the frequency response, you can check out Infidelity's article. It will explain why. So basically, with multiple BAs, you have different impedance varies throughout the frequency range. So let's look at this. This is Sony's XBA 3IP. So I think it has 3 BAs by the looks of the name. So each BA would have usually each BA would have a different impedance, and also impedance varies with frequency range, if you didn't know. Planers don't have this problem, but yeah, dynamics and especially BAs have this problem the most. So look at that, some crazy impedance which varies throughout the frequency range. So if you had a 40 ohm output source, basically that will drop the voltage because there's so much resistance, but relative to the 90 ohm up here, it's fine. So basically you'll have a dip in the frequency response at around 3.5 hertz, which isn't good. That's why for multi-BA earphones, it's best to have a very low output impedance. So another stupid excuse I saw. This was crazy. I couldn't believe it. You need at least 150 milliwatt for it to sound good. Do you know how much T50 RP? You know how many milliwatts it needs to get to 92 dB? 1 milliwatt. That's right, 1 in 1,000 watt to get to deafening 92 dB. That's the same as a jackhammer, right? 1 milliwatt. And then, yeah. And then, what's another excuse? Yeah, you can think yourself, try putting 150 milliwatt into this tiny earphone with tiny drivers and let's see what happens. If you believe in it. You need to use it with $10,000 balance cable with diamond coated wires and dragon bead and 1,000 strand braid, right? No. Any cable should do. Right? We're in 2019. Electronic parts are fine. You won't have much resistance in the cable. And even if they supplied a shit cable, a crappy cable, sorry for the bad link, crappy cable, you're paying $200. Like, shouldn't they include a cable that sounds good with the DM6 already? Come on, $200. Give me like the perfect cable that gives me perfect sound. I shouldn't have to pay an extra like $20 or $30 for an extra cable. You need to use this ear tip or that ear tip. Ear tips does nothing. Thanks again to Tal Hertzen. Foam ear tips, people say significantly reduce the treble, right? But it does nothing. Yeah, barely reduces the peaks. If you have a look, right? Check it out. Link barely reduces the peak. The only time it reduces treble significantly, and most of the time I find, is when it folds in the ear and you can't tell. Really hard to tell because you can't see in your ear. So that's why I never wear foam tips, because it usually just folds in my ear, because your ear has these weird it's not completely straight, your ear canal, right? So once it hits some kind of wall, it just folds up, and then you get muffled treble and more bass. My DM6 sound great, it must be quality control problems. Okay, so you're paying $200 and there's quality control problems? Right, you think it's acceptable? $200 for a tiny IM made in some Chinese sweatshop. You just need some EQ. Yeah, that's the stupidest excuse. For hear this a lot from audiophiles. You need some EQ. Why not EQ the beats? Think about it. All you need to do is pull down a bit of the mid bass and you have like pretty good headphones already, right? Imagine how much EQ you'd have to do to get the Andromeda or the DM6 to sound good. So yeah, just think about it rationally, please. You need some EQ. You just need some EQ. $200. Come on, sound good out of the box. I don't need to be messing around, right? And if you can EQ this, then why not EQ another IEM? Why not just get a $30 IEM and EQ it? Or a $10 IEM has a completely off frequency response and EQ it. Okay. At the end of every video, if you watch my last video, I'll be making a song recommendation. So for this video, it will be I Have Nothing by Whitney Houston. One of the best female vocalists, I believe, to ever exist. The power in her voice and the amount of control is absolutely crazy, and I think this song represents it so well. And it's composed very well. Yeah, melodically, it's also very nice. Yeah, great song. One of my all-time favorite. I Have Nothing by Whitney Houston. And thanks for watching. Hopefully you saved $200. So by the end of this video, you're probably $200 automatically have $200 more in your bank account. Anyways, see you next time. Thanks for watching.